A blank form can kill a product. That sounds absurd, until users disappear one field at a time. They arrive curious. They tap once. Then the screen asks for dates, locations, settings, passwords, preferences, and plans before anything useful happens. Nothing breaks. Nothing crashes. They simply leave. The world's most addictive apps are not winning because they look prettier. They win because they understand the shortcuts inside the human brain.
A default can feel like advice. A tiny head start can create momentum.
A free sample can create obligation. A number can feel cheap or painful depending on what came before it. That is the difference. These are not design tricks. They are behavioral triggers backed by research, and the gap between using them and ignoring them can decide whether an app grows or dies. Every screen asks a silent question. Is this worth my effort right now? If the answer feels uncertain, the user does not debate. They close, swipe, postpone, or forget. That is the leak. Product teams often obsess over gradients, shadows, animations, and icon sets. Those details matter, but they rarely rescue a flow that fights the way people decide. Humans are not calm machines calculating every option. They avoid effort, follow signals, fear loss, and trust what feels already chosen. This is why two apps with the same features can perform wildly differently. One asks users to think. The other makes the next step feel obvious. One sells, the other guides. One creates friction, the other creates momentum before the user notices it.
The interface is never just visual. It is psychological architecture. Start with the most common mistake. Empty fields. Imagine a travel booking screen with 5 blank boxes. Destination, dates, guests, room type, budget. Each box looks simple, but each one demands a decision before the user gets value.
That burden has a name. Decision fatigue. The more choices people face at once, the more likely they are to avoid choosing at all. Columbia University proved this with jam. When shoppers saw 24 flavors, only 3% bought one. When they saw 6 flavors, purchases rose to 30%. More options felt generous. Fewer options sold. Now change the booking screen without removing a single feature. Pre-fill the destination with the user's nearest city. Add a common weekend date range. Set 2 guests by default. Pick the most selected room type. Then replace a vague search button with a message saying 12 results are ready. Nothing magical happened. The task changed. Instead of building the search from zero, the user reviews what is already there. That shift is enormous. In many digital products, 70% to 90% of users do not change default settings. Defaults often feel like recommendations from the product itself. A blank field says, you decide. A smart default says, most people begin here. One creates work, the other creates confidence. The rule is simple. When you already know the likely answer, do not force the user to invent it. Select the common path first, and let exceptions edit later. Then comes the next trap, starting people at zero. A car wash study at Columbia revealed something strange. One group received loyalty cards with 8 empty spaces. Complete 8 washes, earn a free wash. Another group received cards with 10 spaces, but 2 were already stamped. Both groups still needed 8 washes. The second group finished at nearly twice the rate. That is manufactured momentum. This is called the goal gradient effect. People move faster when they feel closer to completion. The powerful part is not the finish line. It is where the journey appears to begin. Look at a typical onboarding flow. The screen says 0% complete. 5 steps remain. No progress. No reward. No proof that anything has happened. Even if the task is short, the experience feels heavier because the user begins with nothing. Now reframe it. Account created? Count that as step 1. Email detected? Count that. First preference selected? Count that. Suddenly, the progress bar begins at 20%, not 0. The same work remains, but the emotional state changes. 0 feels like delay. 20% feels like motion. LinkedIn uses this with profile strength. From the beginning, users see a meter that suggests they are already on the path. It is rarely a dead, empty start.
Every added detail improves the score, and the unfinished profile becomes visible, unfinished business. That unfinished feeling matters because humans dislike open loops. A partially completed task keeps pulling attention back. An untouched task is easy to ignore. So never begin onboarding by telling users they have done nothing. Find something real they already completed and count it. A download, a choice, an account creation, a first click. The head start can be artificial in framing, but the motivation it creates is real. Now ask something harder. When should an app demand trust? Most products get this wrong. They ask for email, payment, permission, or account creation before giving proof that they deserve it. The user enters a URL, waits for analysis, and then sees blurred results behind a locked screen. Create an account to continue. That feels like a hostage situation. The user gave attention. The product gave suspense. Then it demanded identity before delivering value. That is not trust building. It is a toll booth placed before the view. A better version gives a real preview. Show the score. Reveal the top problems. Display what passed. Give enough substance that the user understands the value immediately. Then ask if they want the full breakdown saved to an account. This works because of reciprocity. When someone receives something useful first, they feel a subtle pressure to respond. Robert Cialdini, who spent decades studying persuasion, ranked reciprocity among the strongest forces in human behavior. Free samples prove it. Grocery samples can increase purchases by up to 2,000%. The bite of food is not life-changing. The feeling of receiving something first is what changes the next decision. Costco uses samples. Spotify offers 30 days of premium. Notion lets people experience the product before payment. These companies are not just being generous. They are reducing suspicion before asking for commitment. Value first, request second. That order changes everything. The fourth principle begins in a flat pack box. People assemble furniture, struggle with tiny screws, misread diagrams, and then admire the result as if it were better than it is. The object may not be superior, but it feels more valuable because their effort is inside it. Researchers call this the IKEA effect. When people help create something, they value it more than the same thing made by someone else. A related force is the endowment effect. Even the feeling of ownership can increase attachment. Now look at a common sign-up page. Email, password, submit. Nothing on that page belongs to the user. They have made no meaningful choice. If they close the tab, they lose nothing. That is dangerous. A stronger flow lets users build before asking them to register. Choose a name. Pick a color. Select a style. Set a goal. Preview the thing they are creating. Each choice adds a tiny layer of ownership. The button should not feel like entering a form. It should feel like continuing something already in progress. Duolingo does this well. Before account creation, users choose a language, set a target, and complete a first lesson. By the time registration appears, they may have invested 10 minutes. Quitting no longer feels like skipping paperwork. It feels like throwing away progress. The lesson is not to trap people. It is to let them create value before demanding storage for it. Once something feels theirs, abandonment becomes emotionally costly. But ownership is not the strongest motivator. Loss is. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for showing that losing something hurts about twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. That means a feature framed as a gain often uses the weaker emotional lever. Consider a storage upgrade screen. It says premium offers more space, better backup, and protection. The price may be fair, the icon may be clean, the button may be bright. Then the escape option says, maybe later. There is no cost to refusal, so refusal wins. Now change the frame. List names. Show what will no longer be protected. Add a countdown if the risk is real. Make the dismiss button say, I'll risk it. Same product, different emotion. One screen sells benefits, the other reveals consequences. Humans protect what they believe they already have. That is status quo bias. People prefer keeping their current state, especially when change feels risky. So when action matters, do not only describe what users can gain.
Show what inaction may cost them. If the risk is honest and specific, it becomes far more powerful than a generic upgrade pitch. Finally, price is never judged alone. A $50 monthly protection plan on its own page feels expensive. The user quickly multiplies it, $600 a year. That number becomes heavy, and no thanks feels rational. Now place the same $50 offer beneath a $1,900 laptop in the cart. Add a label, just 2.6%. The price did not change. The mental comparison changed. Suddenly, $50 feels small. The brain is measuring it against $1,900. This is the contrast effect. People judge information relative to what they just saw. Restaurants exploit this constantly. A $90 Wagyu steak can make a $40 salmon feel reasonable, even if the salmon is still expensive.
Real estate agents may show an overpriced house first,
making the next property feel like a bargain. The first number becomes the ruler. For product design, the rule is clear. Never show cost in isolation if context can help. Anchor the user with the larger value first, then present the smaller add-on inside that frame. The best apps do not overpower users. They understand them. Defaults reduce decisions. Progress creates movement. Reciprocity builds trust.
Ownership makes leaving harder. Loss aversion makes inaction feel costly.
Contrast changes whether a price feels painful or trivial. None of these principles require deception. Used well, they remove friction, reveal value faster, and help people continue when the product genuinely serves them. Used carelessly, they become dark patterns, and users eventually feel the trap. That is the line. The deeper truth is simple. People rarely make digital decisions in a purely logical way. They react to effort, timing, framing, and emotion. A screen is not just a place where choices appear. It is a place where choices are shaped. Products people return to are not always the loudest, richest, or prettiest. They are the ones that make the next action feel obvious, safe, valuable, and already underway. In product design, the smallest choice on the screen can become the loudest voice in the user's mind.